What's your thoughts on government cover-ups or covert societies attempting to control humanity? Do you believe in ancient astronauts, intergalactic communication, or extraterrestrial visitations? Ever had an experience with disembodied spirits or the paranormal universe? Are these subjects fact or fiction? Each week, Tony and Eddie explore these unbelievable realities and beyond. Exclusively on Truth Be Told.
Welcome back to Truth Be Told, where we believe an experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me now in studio, world-renowned psychic Eddie Connor, and along with tonight's co-host, Walt Lusk. Thank you for supporting our sponsors, Earth-Friendly Products. For 40 years, they have made our planet a safer, cleaner, and greener place to live with all natural home cleaning products. Request them at your local grocery store or health food markets. For more information about Earth-Friendly Products, visit ecos.com. That is ecos.com.
And take your mind on a literary journey by traveling over to adventuresunlimitedpress.com to purchase books from our famed experts featured right here with Tony and Eddie and Walt.
Sands of Time, and no, we are not speaking about Days of Our Lives, but our next guest, and we will be talking about 40 years in a shadow government.
Today we're interviewing best-selling author and radio host Dr. Sean David Morton about his epic story spanning over 40 years in the life of Dr. Ted Humphrey and his involvement with Area 51, the Dulce Mesa Wars, Black Ops, and the Shadow Government. He's also sharing all about Dr. Ted Humphrey's meteoric rise to become the head of an all-powerful global organization that was engaged in a desperate top-secret race against time in order to save our planet.
This is a rare and precious look behind the curtain of covert ops and deep into the black world of super technology with enough hard science to convince even the most cynical skeptic.
I can't wait for that. You can purchase all of Dr. Sean David Morton's books at Amazon and check out his website and radio show at strangeuniverseradio.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome best-selling author Dr. Sean David Morton.
Wow. He must be somebody special.
Oh, yeah. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, good, man. I feel like I'm on the Muppet Show now. I better be good.
I know, right?
Yay! And all I need is Kermit going, yay! There we go.
It's
Thank
not
you.
easy being green.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's not easy being green.
That's very good. I think there's a job opening for you over there.
That was
You have no idea.
That was Miss Piggy, right?
Disney.
No,
Well, that was Fozzie Bear right there.
Oh,
telling
okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Joke, so.
I wasn't.
Hey, guys, what's up? How are you? Thank you so much for having me on the Universal Broadcasting Network. What a cool thing.
Well, thank you for being here, and I hope you had a great show today. What did you guys talk about?
We interviewed Jim Mars, actually. Jim Mars was he's one of his book Crossfire was actually used by Oliver Stone to do the JFK movie.
Oh, wow.
And Jim is a best-selling author. He's one of us that managed to crack the I don't know, it's not so much of a glass ceiling, but managed to crack the mainstream liars and the jagoffs and jackoffs in the mainstream media,
Right.
with but by using the Kennedy assassination for that. And we just talked a little bit about how once again, with all of this, for all of us, when we're in the truth movement and we're in the what's now called, unfortunately, because the truth is now somehow alternative as opposed to the once again the mainstream liar guys.
Right.
What a concept.
Yeah, exactly. It's again, it's like Brian Williams gets tagged for misremembering a helicopter ride, and yet not a single journalist goes down for lying about
Everything.
weapons of mass destruction in
Right.
Iraq, or about 9/11, or about going all the way back to the Kennedy assassination as well. Brian Williams is the guy that gets tagged for it, although there's a deeper conspiracy there which we might talk about.
Oh,
But
wow.
the whole point was that we were just looking at this, where once you take the red pill and you make the decision, because that's really interesting about the movie, is that Neo decides, and it's the machines that let him loose. That's the one thing I think people miss. The machines are what let him go when he makes the decision to seek the truth. He then suddenly became a virus to the machines, which is why suddenly his pod opens and that big spidery robot grabs him by the throat and pops all the tubes off him and then flushes him down the toilet in the sewer, if you will, to be picked up by the Nebuchadnezzar, if you remember that scene in the movie.
do.
Welcome back,
but it's
welcome back, Mr. Anderson. We've missed you.
Exactly. But there's a spider at the center of this web somewhere. And so if we're kind and understanding to those others who've woken up, because the muscles of their mind have never been used before. Their eyes literally have never been used before, which is why they flash away, they hide away from the light of truth, if you will. But no matter where you pluck the strands of the web, whether or not it's, once again, starting with JFK, because that was such a traumatic experience for everybody in America,
Right.
but then moving forward to, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and then, of course, the Vietnam War, and then, of course, the, Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers, where he proved that the military had no intention of winning the war, but just dragging it on for as long as possible. Going all the way up then to 9/11, which seems to have now really kind of trapped us in what I think was sort of a 12-year matrix of nothing really advancing, of this totalitarian matrix and almost like a time loop, if you will, that right after 2012 we started kind of breaking out of it. But I'm just pointing out that all the same people are involved in these conspiracies, all the same families are involved in them, all the same players seem to just be repeating stuff, and it's not a coincidence that they're all involved in every single one of these. It's like they come with an impossible missions force that they like to use, and they go back to those people every single time to continue their the lies and the spreading of untruth, and it's not going to get any better because now we're looking at Hillary and Jeb Bush as being the candidates for president.
Yeah,
that's just really and James like, oh, I'm my own man. Really, when you come from Bushco and Bushco, and you've got all the same people that your brother worked with, and the same people that that your dad worked with, and somehow it's all going to be different. And of course,
but we're all brainwashed to it now. It's almost like we're like, okay, what the hell?
Well, not all,
but
yeah.
There's the majority of the country. We're just like, okay, there's really no reason to even fight it. Just
it is kind of funny because with the Democrats, it's like the worse you are. I mean, the more horrible person you are, the better you do in the polls. It's just no matter how many crimes Hillary commits, it's the fact that she's one step away from the shoe shine, 2 steps away from the county line, that the only thing that's stopping this bitch from being indicted and thrown in jail and being the lead in Orange is the New Black is that she's running for president of the United States. And everybody knows it. I mean, everybody knows that she's this weird, shady lady, and that, that probably her daughter isn't Bill Clinton's kid, and she's got a penchant for the ladies, if you will. It just makes me shiver.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, if we have to go through 8 years of canary yellow pantsuits and all that, I don't know. I'll just throw up. That's just what I'll do. I mean, and Tim Guns will just throw up.
I loved what Drudge had. They had a picture of her regarding this, her own email network. It said self-server.
Yes, I
think it's
when you're a Secretary of State, you're using your own email to. It's crazy. Anyway, so that's what we were talking about. We were just talking about once again the spider in the middle and what the whole point of all this is. And I do think that there are people behind the scenes. I mean, I'm on the positive side, where I do think that there are people behind the scenes that are working for our benefit.
That's what I was going to.
Oh, of course.
But they don't really know how to help us because we're so inured of this. We've been so dumbed down. We've been so I don't know, ignoratized, I guess, or ignorantized. I'm not sure even what the word is. But we're so dumbed down to it that again, it's almost like if you fix one problem, you create 10 more. If you provide free energy, then you put all these other people out of work. If you cut, well, I'm not even sure what to do. Do you if you introduce all of these amazing technological advancements that I talk about in my book Sands of Time, do you create a global ghetto? Do we have enough responsible people who are willing to be what we call creditors, if you will, or masters, or who are willing to just not be slaves and just spin on the hamster wheel? And it's like that old Star Trek episode where remember the old Star Trek episode where Kirk and Spock in McCoy, there's this weird flower that like spits up in their face, and they're all happy.
Yeah.
I remember, remember Spock's hanging upside down from a tree, and he's got that hot blonde girlfriend. Remember that?
All got high.
and Kirk has to find a way, because this is a perfect role for Kirk. Kirk has to find a way to piss off everybody on the planet so they snap out of it. Remember that?
Yeah.
You remember that episode?
Oh my God, it's
and
been a
he
while,
says at
but
the
yeah.
end, he says, we were meant to march to the sound of a drum, not the not the sound of a lute. And and Spock says, well, it was the only time that I was ever happy, and that whole thing. So God bless Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, God bless him.
Yeah, but it's kind of that. It's like, what happens if you just make everybody happy? Do we have to continue to march to the sound of this drum? I mean, it's and actually, let me give you my one opinion on the Middle East. The biggest thing that's happened is that here in the United States and the Israelis have now financed these ISIS guys.
Yes.
Right.
Which is basically a Hollywood production. I mean, all of their promo videos are being produced on Hollywood and Sunset. These beheadings that they're doing are all completely fake. They don't really show them to you, but the ones that they've showed you, they execute a reporter that we know died 2 years ago in Syria.
Oh, wow.
Then he's cutting the guy's throat with this little, I mean, how do you cut off a guy's head with a butter knife, for God's sake? And the blood's running the wrong way. And then,
hard to do.
But what they have managed to do is piss off the Jordanians, piss off the Iranians, piss off the Iraqis, to the point of where the Iranians and the Iraqis, who, by the way, hate each other's guts, because the Iranians aren't even Arabs, they're Persians. And, they come from a completely different strain than the rest of the Arab race. They come from Medea, who was the wife of Jason the Argonauts and all that stuff. But they fought an 8-year war against each other. And
Right.
what's happening
I
now is
remember
that the Iranian Republican Guard is now in command of Iraqi forces to annihilate these ISIS mofos. And what's going to happen is that if they come together and if they annihilate ISIS, the biggest horror that the United States has is that they will lose their boogeyman in that part of the world.
Wow.
And if we don't have a boogeyman, then we've got no reason to storm around and kill people.
To be there.
And
To be there. And I'll give you one example of this. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, we caught Saddam Hussein within 2 weeks, and we had him on ice, and we kept him on ice. We had him by the 1st of April. We invaded, I think, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 18th of 2003,
Right.
and we had captured Saddam Hussein. We knew exactly where it was, and we were beating the crap out of him. And then they pull him like a rabbit out of a hat on December 3rd, I think it was, of 2003. And it was very strange because it shared story time with them pulling Saddam out of a hat. And at the same time, you have Michael Jackson going, they took pictures of my penis and my buttocks, and it wasn't even the good side of my penis. And they they marched into Michael Jackson's house and flushed him out. So I'm in Cairo, strangely enough, actually shooting a documentary called Prophecy of the Pyramids there. And I'm sitting in this Casbah in the bazaar in like downtown Cairo. And all these Arab guys, when they show Saddam Hussein on the screen, all these Arab guys started screaming bloody murder. And I asked my friend, well, what's going on? And they said, because I understood a little bit of Arabic, and they're screaming that they caught Saddam on Hollywood Boulevard or something. That they what did they catch Saddam in Hollywood? And I said, well, what's going on with this? And he picked up the clicker and actually stopped the TV and pointed out that in the background of where where this Marine had his boot on Saddam's head and all that, you had these date palms. And the guy says, what are those? And I said, those are date palms. And he goes, when do date palms bloom? And I said, well, they bloom in like March and April. And he goes, see, you see the blooming date palms? And it was proof right behind him that they'd caught him in March and April.
Wow.
Because you had these blooming date palms behind him, which don't bloom in December. And oddly enough, then I was in New York and I was doing another interview, and I had a guy who was the producer of the show come over to me, this guy, Ari. It was just Ari. And he hands me his card, and he says, I want you to know that you're absolutely right, because I worked for Special Forces for the Army, and I was in the interrogation unit, and I was one of the people that was beating the crap out of Saddam Hussein in the beginning of April of 2003. So I'm telling you right now, I'm confirming that, yes, we had him. But why did we pretend not to have him? So we could storm around the country, so we could loot the museums, so we could steal the money from the bank, so we could kill his 2 kids. And we had an excuse for our forces to be there. And and again, I also think too that was also when Bush was, in essence, removed from being president of the United States, because he was told they were going to go in for 6 weeks, take out Saddam, and leave, which is his whole mission accomplished thing.
Well, that didn't happen.
Then came in and said, no, that's not how it's going to be. Because if you control Iraq, you control Mesopotamia, control all of Asia for the next 100 years. Man, we got to find Batman. So that was Cheney basically just taking over, saying, no, kid, that's not how it's going to be. We're going to stay for a long time. And now the war has lasted, 12 years there. So it's just, never-ending war, never-ending peace. And it's going to be very interesting that now they're saying that the Iranians are going to be able to come in and do for the Iraqis what the United States could not do in 13 years with trillions of dollars, which is basically train their army to take out a terrorist force. So anyway, so there's that. So we'll talk about something better.
No, we actually had Sean Stone.
Oh yeah, he's a good friend. We're working on a project together.
Oh my god, yeah, amazing. And we had talked about the ISIS and how they just sprang up out of nowhere. It was surprising. I'm like, we're talking about, what's the, not ISIS, but the other ISIL. But
it's the same thing.
Yeah, ISIL. But to see how they came out of nowhere and built up so fast, and we're like, where in the hell did these guys come from? We never even heard of them before.
Yeah, well, especially when their leader's a guy named Simon Shimon, and the guy is a former Israeli intelligence, and he's been photographed with John McCain and all this. So ISIS basically stands for the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, which is what ISIS is. So but anyway, that's and that whole thing is going to be.
Well, I've heard it's been created by this MI6 and by CIA.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And look what they're doing. What are they doing? They are the area that ISIS is trying to control is exactly in line with where the Saudi Arabians want to build their pipeline through Syria. That's the game. The game is all about oil. They wanted to topple Syria, topple Assad in Syria, so the Saudis could build their pipeline into France, so they could compete with the Russians for oil and natural gas into the rest of Europe.
And that's what the whole game's about. Why oil is $50-$60 a barrel is because Russia needs it at 110.
Yes, but it's also because the new king of Saudi Arabia, Salman, who's the brother of the other guy, this guy died at 89.
Yes.
And their secession doesn't go from father to son. It goes to whoever the brother is. So Salman's like 82, but he's the one that says you're not going to see $100 barrel in oil anymore. He's the one that said we're probably going to get oil back down to like $20 a barrel, which of course is now sending the Russian economy into free fall.
Yes.
The Venezuelans and the Argentinians say they've got to have oil way up there so they can pay the international bankers. So ultimately it goes back to the spider at the middle of the web, which is the Babylonian banking system and the freaking bankers all the way back, because everybody's hurting because these countries have debt over 300
up to the yin yang
300% of gross domestic product. Actually, Japan is 400% of gross domestic product right now.
Jesus Christ!
And they just need to do something like what Iceland did, which is just turn around and say, we're not going to pay interest on money we've already paid, because interest is just something that's just made up. And all the bankers are going, oh my God, if you repudiate the interest, we'll go into free fall. There'll be death and destruction and doom, the apocalypse, dogs living with cats. Oh my God. It's just, and they're telling the Greeks what to do. And it's just, it's going to be weird. And the Europeans don't get along anyway. So the whole European Union idea is just kind of Hitler light. So, it's what Hitler wanted to do, except without Hitler, unless Angela Merkel's his daughter, because she really looks like him. But
well, he did have 2 children.
Yeah, that's what we say. I don't know where they went, but Angela looks really sneaky.
Well, what we're talking about now is actually your volume 3 and 4 of Sands of Time.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, actually, I'm working on volume 3, but we have volume 1 and 2. But Sands of Time. Big. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this really is kind of the beginning. What you wrote us, volume 1 and volume 2, is what we're talking about today, and it's fascinating that it's been around and going on for so long, and yet we're still doing the same stuff over and over as a human race.
Well, this is what I think what the book points out, and this is what this gentleman was a contact of mine for about. He started contacting me after I started investigating Area 51. And started appearing on Coast to Coast, and that whole thing evolved just because Art Bell was the only guy who would take our phone calls, and there just happened to be a cell phone. I'm sorry, a payphone right out in front of this place called the Little Ailey Inn, which was a burger joint in Rachel, Nevada. Mm-hmm. We would see crazy things at Area 51, and we would call this nutty talk show host who would actually take our calls and be interested in what we had to say about what we were seeing when we were camping out there, and so. He started providing me with a stream of information for me to begin to release on the radio. And the last I heard from him was he called me. He was in the grandstand or on the podium at Obama's inauguration in 2009. Oh. And he calls me on the cell phone, because I bet him money, because I'd written an article that I predicted that Obama was going to screw up the oath, and that he was going to screw up the oath of office because he did.
Sorry? He did.
Yeah, because he was not a citizen and he could not take the Article 6 oath which is the article of the presidency of the republic. Now he can be the CEO of the corporation and commander in chief, which are two other oaths and papers that you sign and all that stuff. But I said, you watch, he's going to screw up the oath. They're going to find a way for him to screw it up. And he did. So Ted calls me on the phone, and I hear him laughing on the TV because he's laughing up in the corner saying, "You son of a bitch, I can't believe I just watched the president of the United States screw this oath up, and you told me it was going to happen." And that was the last I heard from him. But then I got contacted by some very scary attorneys up in Century City who asked me to come in on an estate matter, who told me that the Dr. Humphrey, not his real name, by the way, but Dr. Humphrey had, quote, moved on. They never said he died. They just said he moved on. And I said, I don't really know what that means. He said, you don't have to know, but he wills you these journals. And so I got these 4 journals of his experiences, which then I then turned into kind of did not get myself shot, turned into an action adventure story, if you will, of his life in the shadow government. And it's very interesting where it starts because his father was experimenting in Barstow, California with time travel. In essence, he had been with a group of Nazi scientists that they'd brought over after the war, specifically one of them being Herr Dr. Hans Kammler. And Kammler he was the Uber Grubenführer. He was the most powerful man in Europe outside of Berlin, outside of Hitler. And he was also the one that actually set up the logistics for the concentration camps. But it was Kammler that was the one that was doing all the research and the experiments on what they called the Nazi bell, which is known as the Die Glocke, the Die Glocken.
Yes.
And that was also because when they were experimenting with the bell, it was creating gravity waves, and the gravity waves were actually altering the flow of time. And that became of great interest. Somebody should do a movie about like time traveling Nazis or something. But anyway, the challenge of this is that then Ted's father disappears when he's about 17 years old or so, and he then dives into the shadow government really to figure out what happened to his father. So the litany goes from him going to USC and then going to Caltech and then being offered coming up with a rocket fuel formula that the government then classifies. And so he then goes to he works at Montauk, actually at Camp Hero up in upstate New York. And it was there that they have a device which they called the Beast. And this device was based on the technology that they'd learned from the Nazi bell. And it was two rotating rings going clockwise and counterclockwise with a central base ring in the center. And they discovered that you could create a field that could actually teleport objects from place to place. So what they were doing with this knowledge was they were taking these probes and they were teleporting probes into the heart of Russian nuclear experiments so they could actually then study the time dilation effects on nuclear explosions. Because whenever you have an explosion, there's actually at the center of the explosion, it actually does dilate time. And with the unique part about nuclear explosions as well, which may be another reason why these extraterrestrials supposedly contacted Eisenhower and said, look, we'll give you all kinds of stuff if you stop playing with your nuclear bombs, is that they rip open holes in the time-space continuum. Oh. So the two biggest things that happened in the history of man, as far as what's going on with, I guess, what you would call an alien invasion, was a series of experiments that the Germans did with the Nazi bell, which tore open this rip in the fabric of time and space, and the Project Rainbow, which was the Philadelphia experiment on August 13th of 1943, August 12th, I'm sorry, 1943. So and that not only did that rip a hole in the time-space continuum, but the USS Eldridge then traveled through time and ripped holes in the time-space continuum in 20-year in 20-year spaces, and it went to the end of its tether in August of 2003 at the end of a 60-year cycle, and then kind of created this gigantic electromagnetic pulse, and then shot back through time where it then reappeared outside of the Norfolk Naval Test Center. And part of the thing that backs this up is that I wrote an article in February of 2003 where, after interviews with people like Preston Nichols and Al Bielek and all that, I said, well, watch what's going to happen, because if they're right, the Eldridge is going to reappear somewhere off the East Coast, and it's going to reappear and it's going to create a massive electromagnetic pulse of some kind, and this is going to happen between August 12th and 13th and 14th in this period of time, and see what happens on that day. Well, lo and behold, after I'd written this article in February and I posted online so everybody could see it, something happened. You'll notice that it was 4 p.m. of August 13th of 2003. That was the New York blackout that blacked out New York City for 3 days, and big chunks of the East Coast for 28 days. And I'm telling you that it was from it was an after effect of the Eldridge ripping these holes in time and then going back to where it came from.
Now, is this reversible when we rip something like that? Is that something that can be corrected, or is it?
That's what we've been working on. That's what we've spent almost 50 years actually working on, trying to come up with the devices and the machines that can actually plug these holes. Because it began an invasion from two different sectors. And do we have a break coming up?
No,
go for it.
Okay. Well, I just need just 1 second. Can I get you guys to just riff for just 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
And,
God, yeah.
I need to take a quick break. So just do a commercial or something. I'll be right back. Okay?
All right.
Awesome.
No, go for it.
Thank you.
Well, we're talking to
Dr. Sean David Morton. He just finished his radio show in Vegas, and he's definitely schooling us today.
Oh my word, we have to have this guy back like next week.
Yeah,
and he's
amazing.
reading a series called Sands of Time, and he's done 2 books, and he's working on 2 more.
Yeah, and we're talking about the shadow governments.
Yes.
And I'm really curious of when he says they.
Well, that means what that means if it's a shadow government, there really are MIBs,
Right.
Men in Black.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering why they choose who they choose for president.
I do not know, comrade.
Oh, because they're assigned.
Well, I know.
Oh
they're
well,
assigned,
Obama
but
was picked a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, a long time
A
ago.
lot of them are.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe that they chose like Bush.
Well,
I
mean, Bush was the one that was chosen, and Al Gore almost won.
He did
Al
win.
Gore did
I
win.
mean, Al Gore did win in Florida. That's pretty much a bona fide
Which
fact.
would
I
have
have it
put
on
him in-
first-hand personal knowledge of a guy who was in Florida at the time, and yeah, Al Gore won.
And
And
he
then they
was
dinked around
president.
with it, and obviously he didn't get the presidency.
Yep.
Well, I was real surprised because of Al Gore, why he didn't fight it.
Well, because the powers that be probably told him
They're like,
resistance is futile.
And it's
Yeah.
easy. All you got to do is hold your wife up or your kids up
Yeah,
and say, anything can happen.
Yeah, resistance is futile.
Oh, it's a scary world that we live in, but it's
Yeah, and I want to ask Sean David about the time space continuum, the rips in the energy fields, because if that's how other beings from other parts of the universe come into our Earth's gravitational pull, is through multidimensionality and
Yes.
parallel
Right.
universes, then we just F that up all over the place.
Yes, we did.
And which is why they're going to the president, or went to the president back in the day and had them to try to stop playing around with the atomic bomb.
I was gonna say,
Hence
that's what we're doing.
Roswell.
Yeah.
Because we were playing with matches, and they said, guys, you can't do this. Because I mean, any nuclear explosion just on its own, you're going to see it from space.
Yeah, you're going to see it from
Let
space.
alone the
It's gonna
time
affect
continuum.
everything. we
It-
do.
yeah.
yeah.
It's ripples.
Everything. It could literally F up the
Yeah,
entire
it'll
solar.
ripple
solar,
it'll ripple the gig.
Yeah, it's good. I'm telling you, and that's why you see and hear often about the spaceships coming into any area where they're doing missile testing and atomic
Well, they've shut
testing.
down many
Yeah.
nuclear launches.
Yes, they have.
and
All
just
over the
systems.
world. Ours, Russians. Yes, they have.
Oh, that's scary. I mean, it's
Thank goodness.
Thank God they're there to watch over us.
Yes.
But what about the ones that are not our friends? I'm surprised they don't let it happen.
Well, they have their own agenda for the most
Oh.
part, because like some of the reptilians.
Hi, I'm very sorry. I've been dealing with a bit of a stomach flu, so I'm very sorry. I just had to.
No worries.
I haven't had a break because I have my own show.
That's right. Well,
Your
we're
show,
glad you're here with us. And
I'm okay.
We've just been talking among ourselves.
Yes, I bet you.
But Eddie, you had some questions. I want you to.
Well, Sean David, I wanted to ask you about when you left us just a second ago. We were talking about how there's a rip in. I'm going to use my limited language in the electromagnetic field and or the multidimensionality, the non-physical part of the veil.
Yes.
And so, and you said that back in the day, the extraterrestrials went. Was it to Eisenhower?
Yep.
It was the
Well, there were
50s.
two sets. The two sets that came through this rip, and the first set met with were we think were benevolent, but they were these tall whites that met with Eisenhower in February of 1953.
Yep.
That they called, and it's a fairly famous meeting. You can see the testimonies of Gerald Light and Archbishop McIntyre of the Los Angeles Archdiocese, where these tall whites that they called the Etherians. They never called themselves anything, by the way. The only reason they called them Etherians is because they had devices on their belt that could allow them to appear and disappear. And they demonstrated their ships and the whole thing. And what they said to Eisenhower was, well, look, we'll help you with technology and we'll help you ascend on your planet if you just give up the nuclear weapons. And they warned Eisenhower at that time that what was happening with the nuclear testing was that we were knocking the planet out of its orbit, basically. That it was sort of like putting a shoe in a washing machine, that we were actually knocking we disturbed the rotational, basically the nodal axis and the rotation of the planet, number one. Number two, that we were ripping these holes in time space as well, and that we just didn't know what we were messing with. Now, Eisenhower, number one, thought to himself, well, if you don't want us to have nuclear weapons, then